Hello! In this lesson, I'm going to teach you how to understand and play the major scale. Now, I won't go into all the theory behind the major scale. We can save that for a future lesson. But we do need to understand whole steps and half steps before we dive in. This is the same idea or pattern that helped us play the musical alphabet, which we did in another lesson. So in this lesson, we're going to look at a very similar idea to help us play a major scale, and that is starting with the whole step and half step idea. So I've got a piece of paper here to kind of help us out. Now we need to understand this. Hopefully you can see that. Whole step equals 2 frets. A half step equals 1 fret. So you're really going to want to remember that. A whole step equals 2 frets, half step equals 1 fret. All right, so before we jump into the actual pattern, let me just show you what I mean. Let's say we are on the 3rd fret of the A string. If we want to move a whole step up, we're going to go up 2 frets. So 1, 2. So we just moved a whole step. Let's say we're back on that 3rd fret. If we want to move a half step, we're just going to move up 1 fret. So just remember that. Whole step equals 2 frets. Half step equals 1 fret. All right, so let's look at the major scale. If you don't know what I mean by a major scale, you've probably heard it many times, particularly if you're a fan of The Sound of Music. Doe a deer, a female deer. So how do we play a major scale? All right, let's take a look at this piece of paper here. All we have to do is remember this pattern and you'll be able to play any major scale in any key. So here it is. Whole step, half step. Whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So again, we want to remember whole step equals 2 frets, half step equals 1 fret. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step. All right, so that is the pattern that you're going to want to memorize. So let's use the C scale as an example. So here we go. Let's go back to the 3rd fret of the A string. That's actually a C note. So we're starting this scale. This will be the C major scale. We're going to start on the C note. And that's when you're playing a major scale, when you're playing it from start to finish, you're always going to start the root note, which is the first note of the major scale. In this case, we're going to be playing the C. All right, so let's go back to this pattern. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step. All right, so starting with the C note, we're going to move up a whole step, which is 2 frets. We're going to move up another whole step, which is 2 frets. Then we're going to move up a half step, which is 1 fret. Now we've got a whole step jump, another whole step jump, another whole step jump, and a half step. So all I did was just follow that pattern. Starting on that C again, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. All right, so remember, it's all about the pattern. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. I know I've said it a bunch of times, but I really want you to remember that because once you know that pattern, you can play any major scale anywhere on the fretboard. So as long as you know what note you're starting on, you're going to know what major scale pattern you're using. So as long as you know that pattern, you can play any major scale you want, which is the beauty of it. All right, so let's try it on one other string just to reinforce this pattern, this idea, and hopefully it'll start to make sense for you. Let's try it on the low E string. So here's our low E. Now we're using the open string, so in order to jump a whole step, we've got to skip the first fret and then move right to the second fret. Then another whole step, which is 2 frets, half step, 1 fret, whole step, 2 frets, whole step, half step. All right, and you could even do it backwards if you wanted to. All right, so ascending or descending. So that is the major scale. Use that anywhere you'd like, and you'll be playing any major scale in any key. All right, hopefully this has helped. We'll see you again soon for another lesson.